Hey guys, welcome back to Wellness to Greatness. I'm actually really excited to talk to this gentleman here. His name is Mitch Webb. Sorry about that,
You
Mitch.
call me Webb.
No. No, he's not a witch. He's not a villain. He's actually a very kind person. Yeah. And Mitch is a health coach and an expert in nerves. You'll get all into that. But he has such a interesting story. And what I gathered in my extensive background research on you is that you kind of started out as this like frat boy football player, you know what I mean? Just kind of like rowdy, likes to have fun. And then there was this traumatic experience when you were traveling internationally where, you were having fun, goofing around. And I'll let you tell that in a second, but it doesn't stop there, guys. So I want you to stay with us because this man has conquered so much adversity, and to see where he started as, this like cool football frat boy, to this man with a family who is now helping others, especially other men in this journey of health and wellness and how to get out of trauma, or move through it at least, and having the right tools to succeed in life and live their best version of themselves. And quite honestly, Mitch, you're my first male guest speaker. And I kind of was juggling a little bit on this idea. I'm like, do I stick to just women speakers? And I thought that is so not fair, Janelle, because a lot of my listeners are females. And guess what? These females have sons. They have, uncles, fathers, husbands, you know what I mean? And this information here, even though Mitch is a male, could also be very relatable to some of the traumas and things that we've experienced in life. So I'm very excited to have you here, Mitch. And if you can start from that moment of when you were abroad internationally and that trauma, if you could start us there.
Absolutely. First, thank you for having me on. And I love the introduction, and I haven't been called a frat boy and a football player in a long time. So that's definitely making me smile. And I love that I'm your first male guest. What an honor. Thank you so much for having me on and opening up your, offerings to people. And, I have to relate to that because I've been doing this trauma stuff for, 3 or 4 years now, and it's been strictly with women. I was in a mentorship with Lyme, and I think there was 3 guys and about 30 women, and that's just been really typical for my journey into the emotional wellness. The ladies are all into it, and I certainly heal like the ladies. I've learned to be very open like that. They've help this flower sprout. So I'm thankful, and also want to bring this message to men because I think it's so needed there. And I love working with ladies too. So hello to all the ladies.
Yeah.
But
well, and I think too is that, I don't know if you can relate to this, but do you find it easier for you to speak about your trauma in your past with a female, or do you find you actually connect more bro to bro? Like, do you feel any difference between the two?
I tend to really connect with the ladies because they're willing to be vulnerable and open, and they've been doing this for a while. I see so much similarities, like in the group. When I went to this mentorship, being a health coach, being a fratty football bro, I didn't know how this was going to go. And every single one of them, I could sit down with them. They're my sisters now. And it's like we have so much in common. And, certainly when I meet a man who is more emotionally healthy and open to this work and vulnerable, that's like, love that. I don't get an opportunity to do that as much, So, the guys, a lot of times they tend to hold back a little bit and, afraid being vulnerable because of all our conditioning. It makes so much sense. And so, that's why I try to be as vulnerable and as open as I can and share the good, bad, and the ugly. And, I'm a work in progress as many are. And, I try to show up fully in that and be authentic as I can to inspire other men to see the same wounds that I've had and see the success and see that they can do it too.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
So tell me your story. Start from the beginning.
Oh gosh. So you want to hear about when I fell out of the window? So I'll
Yes.
and then I'll pause because that's just the beginning, right? So I was 20 years old. Went to study abroad in Germany. I was in Bremen, and it was the World Cup. So that's soccer, football. How dare I to my European clients? So this is probably
That's all right.
I don't remember, but it's like 2006, 7, 8, somewhere in there. So, anyways, they're partying like crazy. I'm a 20-year-old frat boy, and so we were getting after it too. I remember speaking of drinking that night. I remember how crazy and electric everything was, and I remember this guy driving. Actually, I think he was driving. Maybe he was just on my American driving side. But he's hanging out of his car with like a bottle of Jack Daniels, just like, "La," and I'm like, what is going on? Like, so we were partying to excess. You can imagine being a 20-year-old not being allowed to drink, and then you can just buy booze. And God, this is so embarrassing. We're hanging out after the bars in my hotel room, and I think I have like 2 bottles of liquor. I can't imagine doing it. And I put my head back and like had a little bit of both, and that was like supposed to be cool. And I could not balance all that weight distribution.
No.
And so I fell out of a second story window, hit my head. I played football and had a lot of concussions with a helmet on. And this was very different, and I knew it right away. It's like something inside of me was like, oh shit, this is different, and just did everything wrong from there. As far as like a concussion protocol, like you're supposed to stay awake, and I was almost blacked out, I would imagine, and just went to bed and woke up in a foreign country, puking everywhere. I thought it was a bad hangover. It was definitely severe traumatic brain injury symptoms. I mean, I remember drinking like I was in a foreign country. I was very closed-minded and hadn't left the United States before, and so I'm eating like McDonald's and Coca-Cola. Like, talk about throwing gas on the fire. I've got a book over here, the concussion repair manual, and I did all the wrong things. And so I knew something was wrong. I didn't get any help, and started having panic attacks, anxiety, insomnia, and didn't know what was going on.
Yeah. So I like to add there, because whenever someone shares an emotion, whether it's shame or embarrassment or whatever, I have this tendency to remind them that we're all human. In 2 days, it's going to be my 1 year from quitting alcohol.
All right. Good.
And thank you. Yeah. And so it's interesting with sobriety, you start to look back at all these funny, air quote, funny stories from drinking, even though you're like, oh, that's a little embarrassing, but you can share it with laughter. And then you look back and you're like, now it's like most gut wrenching. Like, who was that person, And so I can relate with you when you say, well, I don't know why I did that. Well, it's because your frontal cortex was like gone, and because of from drinking, and you thought it was funny. You guys were having a good time. So don't feel that way, please. And we've all gone through it. Yeah. Mhm. 100%. I mean, and listeners too, you're looking at 2 people who, I never counted myself as a frat girl, but I definitely was a party girl at some point. Like, I was living in the mountains in Banff, Alberta, and there was a lot of stuff going on there. And I think it's not all of us have gone through this, but at some point we've done some form of binge drinking or using substances. And the thing is, you can come from the other side of it. And if you're not someone of prescribed medication or substances or alcohol, you could have another form of addiction that is feeding these anxieties and depressions and other things. But what I want to ask you next, Mitch, is that you also had other health conditions. And I'm wondering, was this tied to just the lifestyle you were living? Because you talked about diabetes. Now, is that after your head trauma, did diabetes come in around then? Or like, and I'm guessing it was type 2, right? So
Yeah, that's a good question. The more I've learned about metabolic issues, I think there's big roots that we don't often see in a dysregulated nervous system, right? So, and that being the nervous system is connected to all the systems of the body, the hormones, the immune system, um, all these different, the brain, the metabolism, circulation. I mean, you name it. And so and what it means to be dysregulated, it means that we're stuck. So we're stuck at the top in high activation, we're stuck at the bottom and shut down, or we're oscillating between the two. And so what that does is drives blood sugar uh, and without food being involved. So, thinking about my lifestyle. Now, my diet at that time consisted of, you know, 25-cent wings and dollar beers that I could get at the local, pub and stuff. And so was I eating good? No. Um, not the best, but who is in college? You're kind of eating what you can get your hands on. I did have like a what's it called? A cafeteria thing that I had and ate pretty good for most of the time, but then it was lots of alcohol. So could that contribute? I had a non-alcoholic fatty liver, so there you go. Could definitely be more alcoholic related. So, I think there's a lot going on there. I think the big root for me was the dysfunctional nervous system. And so it's all in there playing a role.
can you explain that a little bit more? Like, can you break that down a bit more? What you mean by, so you're saying when you are dysregulated, you kind of stuck at the bottom, which I'm guessing where it's not as bad,
Right.
and then stuck at the top gets pretty bad in your sugar levels. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, it's just chronic stress is another way to think of it. And I wouldn't say that one is better than the other. Certainly when you're in a lot of activation and you can't sleep, you can't sit still, you feel like, oh man, shutting down would be great. But on the opposite side of that, shutting down happens when we've had too much too fast. It's overwhelming. We've been in sympathetic activation for too long. And our body, very smart, our nervous system, very smartly, intelligently, it says, man, this guy can't keep going at this rate. We're going to have to shut things down. And so then you got this high tone dorsal part of your parasympathetic nervous system. So we hear parasympathetic and we're like, oh, yeah, that seems really good. Well, there's two branches. There's one very slow and myelinated, and it's very involved. And it comes on. It's like kind of slowly hitting the brakes. That's what we want. That's typically going to be around like food and social engagement, things like that. And then there's the high tone dorsal, which is like it's a primitive, unmyelinated, early way of like slamming on the brakes, right? So it's like elevator
Right.
dropping, and what you're gonna feel there is you're probably not gonna feel anything. It feels like you're underwater. A good analogy that my mentor gives is she was in a bad accident. I can't remember exactly what happened, but she was in shock. That's what that is. You're in shock. If you're in the headlights, you're frozen,
Mhm.
and so all your blood's going to your core. You're not feeling a whole lot, and so she was going to the hospital, and her friend slammed her hand in the door. And very calmly, she said, "Hey, you slammed my hand in the door." And so that's a very smart adaptation, but it's just showing the level of bodily awareness that we have because the body is trying to keep us from dying. It thinks it's going to die. Another way of thinking of it is playing possum like an animal. Um, and so going back to the question is, how does blood sugar come from that? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, because I'm blood sugar related to diabetes and all that.
So I hope I can say this accurately. This is something I'm just kind of learning about, to be honest with you. But if we think about it,
Okay.
we got all this intense activation, anxiety. Let's say the body says, and so this clamp comes on and it drops us down that elevator, right? And so now we're not feeling anything. But the activation, if people are listening, I'm moving my hand. The activation is still there. It still needs to come out for us to come out of the freeze. And so that activation is going to drive, blood pressure, heart rate, and blood sugar, because there's this underlying stressor, this threat that our body is perceiving, and our body's protecting us by shutting down, but the activation doesn't go away. And without having the perfect scientific um, description here, there's a lot going on in the system that's driving up blood pressure, the blood sugar, and that's where we can get elevated blood sugar without even having any food. It's the same thing as like coffee. So if you have coffee in the morning on an empty stomach, what's it going to do? Some people, it can actually drop it. People that have more stress, if your adrenals aren't able to handle that, they're not as healthy as they could be. Let's say you can get a massive spike in blood sugar and you didn't have any food. So just like same thing with stress, you can have that. You got a stressful meeting, you could wear a blood glucose monitor and it may shoot up at a stressful moment during the event. So what we're saying here is, yes, lifestyle and diet is really important, but it's almost like if we're controlling that, and that's stressing us out as well. I like to look at all the stressors and see where can we make adjustments and hit that root.
Okay. I love that. So I'm going to try to spew that back out to you to make sure that I fully understand, and maybe in a language too that our listeners can understand. So, and that makes sense what you're saying about stress. So when you look at, a fight or flight sort of response, right? We release, our blood pressure goes up. It taps into our sugar, our storage to give us energy, to move, to get it done. So that makes sense to me. And when you were talking about the parasympathetic, you said there was two types, right?
Mm-hmm.
You said one was a dormant, you
High
said?
tone dorsal
And then,
and low tone dorsal.
okay, high tolerant and low tolerant
Yeah, and
dorsal.
that's the dorsal
And then the
branch.
one that,
That's the dorsal branch. It has two, and there's also a ventral branch.
right.
So ventral would be
Mhm.
social engagement. That's what we want. And then the dorsal, there's two
Yes.
branches. There's the high tone dorsal, which is freeze, and then there's low tone dorsal that's more associated with like digestion and rest.
Okay. Because I've always thought of parasympathetic as a good thing. But when I'm hearing you saying, and this is new for me, I'm actually just started studying neuroscience, so I haven't got to this piece
Mm-hmm.
yet. But I thought that was really cool. So basically saying that you can have like a good amount of parasympathetic, but there is a one where it's almost like this shutdown that you're trying to say. And like your friend putting her friend, her hands got slammed in the door and she couldn't feel it because she was just sort of down
Yeah.
there. It's like
And
next level.
what I would
That
add
concept.
to that is that it's not good or bad. And that's a trap, because we can really, man, I'm in freeze and this is bad, right? It's not bad. It's incredibly intelligent and it's saving your butt. Like the body really is smart and it's always protecting us and doing the best that it can to survive based on the conditions that we've been, the environments that we've been in.
Right. Okay. I love that. It's not good or bad. It's just take notice of it. And that's what's going on for your body's trying to protect
Yeah, the
you.
more we treat
I
it
love
with
that.
compassion and without judgment, with acceptance and allowing things, like that's just what like a little kid would want, and that's what that is some unprocessed um, fight flight responses, survival responses that we didn't have the capacity to handle, move through at the time, and so we shut down, and those intensities, those survival responses live in our body until we meet them with the compassion, with the awareness, and we allow them to complete the cycle like they needed to do. So you may see someone in a session, they're wanting to fight all of a sudden, or they're wanting to run away, or they're wanting to lay down and play dead. And it's all part of completing that cycle. And that's how we get these intensities out of our system.
It made me think of when I was in college learning massage therapy, and in our anatomy class, or maybe it was physiology, I'm not sure. But our instructor was telling us about these flight, fight, freeze, all these sort of things. And she says, usually when you get startled, then you'll respond based off how you are wired. And she's like, some people will be frightened and then fight, or some will run. And I lifted up my hand. I'm like, what if? Because like, this has happened to me where it's almost like I was startled, but before I really was startled, I would like punch or like get ready to fight before I truly knew what was going on. And she's like, there's just something wrong. She's like, there's something wrong with your cocktail.
No, I'd say that's extremely healthy. It's a great response from the body. And yeah, I think fighting, running away, like I can tell a kind of a crazy story really quick. I don't want to throw us off too much.
That's okay. No, share
Yeah.
Share
I heard this story. A friend of mine does breathwork classes, and we were talking about titration and going really slow and trying to understand that. And a couple of days goes by, and I get a call from her, and she's like, "Hey, it's like late at night, and what's going on?" I could feel it before I even answered the phone, like something's wrong, And what had happened is someone had brought up in a breathwork class, group class, had brought up a sexual trauma, and a woman was there who had a repressed sexual trauma that it triggered that, and she rips her clothes off and runs into the woods. And that was like, wow, that's really interesting. And when I brought it up in class, and we kind of went over it in depth, and one of the things that my friend said that really clicked for me is like, man, that's great. She did exactly what she needed. So think about someone that doesn't know they have that in their system. They're probably being overpowered. They don't feel like they can respond. And so when that fight, they don't even know it's there. They don't remember. The body hides it because it's too much. And so when she remembers, the system responded so intelligently, is get the fuck out of it, run. And and there was a lot of work, and it showed, a lack of capacity and foundation from the group, but the response from the lady was intelligent. And so it's really easy to look at these different responses and think we'll label them good or wrong or bad. And that's where education is so important in this work, because we can take a step back. And I mean, for me, it shocked me to hear that a lady ripped her clothes off and ran in the woods. And I'm like, man, I hope that never happens in something I was dealing with. But then when we look at that and we talk about the situation and, how this fight flight is, this response was not allowed. It was blocked in her body. There's not the capacity to do that, the ability to do that. And so now when it gets the chance, it responds beautifully, And so when you can see the science and understand, polyvagal theory and completing these things, it's like, wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, I'm trying to picture myself in her situation. So she was reliving it, and what she would have done is ran if she could have. So it was almost like innately she stripped down because she was in a vulnerable state. She was being attacked, being violated. So it's like she went back to that state of what she was in, and she ran. And to me, that actually kind of feels empowering and healing. Now that
it does. And that's what we would expect in a session. That's what we build. Capacity is all about being able to sit with that intensity. So someone that had more capacity and had been slowly, incrementally working towards that, well, the moment may look a little bit different, where they're just sitting here and they're experiencing that intensity, and they're feeling their body wants to run, but they are staying connected to their body. They're feeling their butt in the chair. They're really in their environment, and they're with that part that holding it that needs to complete that. And that's kind of a thing that, if I can explain that a little bit, that's something that happened to me a couple of months ago for the first time when I was doing parts work. And this kind of shows where you got more capacity. And not that hers was wrong. It's just that this is a different way of doing it. It's like before I would work with these parts and these emotions would come up and it would feel like me, right? Because we are coupled. That part and that emotion and that experience. So it's like, I don't know, maybe something terrible happened to me with water and drowning. And every time I'm around water, I'm drinking water, I get very upset, And so I'm coupled fear with water from the experience that I had. And so what we want to do is we want to kind of uncouple those things. Water's not bad. Water's not scary. The thing that you went through was scary and it's still living in our system like the threat is happening now. Right. And so in the situation with me where I'd built a lot of capacity and I'm working with this part, it was like a psychedelic thing. Is the only way I know how to describe it, because it's like I went to cry and feel the grief or sadness that was coming up. And I remember kind of like, boom, like catching and going and looking at it. And I had this experience of uncoupling the fear and the experience where I could feel the sadness. I could feel the grief. I could feel my adult self back here holding it. And there's also this other part of me that's like experiencing this and laughing hysterically while I'm crying, while I'm holding this part at this experience that was so different. And what I was reflected back to me was, yeah, your adult consciousness came on board. You held this part, this emotion, and that's out of your system now, because you're able to meet it with curiosity, with capacity, and with compassion. Is that like the 3 C's? Do I need to write that down?
You should write that down right now. I absolutely love this. It reminds me of another episode I did where I would use an example of a Rubik's Cube. So you're taking that emotion, that piece, and you're putting it in your hands, like you're observing it, bringing curiosity around that. So I'm really happy that you emphasize that. Reading about you're getting people in tune to their body, their feeling. You're helping them with their health and wellness. So their digestion, what they're eating, because the polyvagal nerve, it branches out into like our lungs, our gastrointestinal tract. So what we are putting in our body is just as important. But like you're saying, it's not just food and exercise, it's the stress. It's, what your experience, your trauma. And so it sounds like to me that you do kind of like a full scope. But what would you say, not to get too off track here, but I feel like we're just kind of going the flow here. But what would you say is like your primary thing when you are working with men or women for coaching? What is it that you do for them? Like, where do you start?
One thing I want to clarify too, when we're talking about the gut and food and digestion, I had so many crazy symptoms when it came to the gut, and you could have diagnosed me with a bunch of different labels on it, right? And those labels had treatments that went with them. And certainly I tried everything, and it would just cause more symptoms, and it would shift, because for me, it was less about, these were just symptoms that were a result of a nervous system that's stuck in fight or flight or shut down. And in either one, you're not going to be digesting food. Your body's, gearing up to, run away from a threat or shut down, and things are sluggish. And as I couldn't eat, I was basically eating meat and salt and eating it one time a day and eating as much as I could. And I went down to 140 pounds at one time, and I thought I would never eat again. I couldn't exercise, couldn't sleep. And when I started doing this work, the funny thing that would happen to me in sessions is I would start burping. We start talking about really difficult things, And it was like, as I connected some dots on things, I'd have these big bursts. And I was like, what is going on? And it's basically the fascia is like holding all of this tension. And, think about your intestines and your gut and your diaphragms, and everything's been kind of smushed in there because the system is just so constricted. And, it's like one little piece starts to unwind and another. And so the system is starting to relax, it's starting to drop out of that high activation, come back into, what we'd call window of tolerance. And, the more, I can say if I am dysregulated, if I had a big session and I'm feeling it afterwards, or I had a very stressful situation, my gut can flare back up again. And so I was always chasing, like, is it this food or that food? And can this supplement help or not? And I've seen it so many times now that it's like, I know that it's a stress thing. There's nothing to worry about. We don't want to add secondary fear to a symptom, because that's a lot of times what keeps it stuck. And if we've had them for a long time, it makes sense that we'd have that fear. And so again, this is an example of where education is so important. But the question that you asked was primary when it comes to coaching. The thing that I learned from Irene that really changed everything for me from my health coaching days, which I still do health coaching, but it's about meeting people where they're at. She calls it meeting the moment. And that is trusting myself and my nervous system and your nervous system. It's giving all your power back. Instead of coming in with an agenda, an intention that says, I'm going to fix you. That's already saying you're broken. You can't do it yourself. Let me, fix you. Let me show you. And so it's more about, hey, I'm going to be here and I'm going to meet this moment, and I'm going to be really aware of my body, because it's going to tell me things about yours. And I'm going to be really fixated, but I'm in my body and with them. It's 100 and 100. Right. And so instead of coming in and telling people what to do, it's meeting people where they're at and teaching them to listen to their body, to maybe come more into that window of tolerance, come out of that head, drop into the body. And then they have all I don't have the answers, and that was really stressful for me, as a coach in the past, of like, I got to figure this out and fix this person. And that would stress me out. And it also takes their power away. So we're giving that back, and saying like, hey, once we are in our body, what are you feeling? Like, what's going on? What do you think you need? And so we just get really cleared in the beginning on where they're at, where they're wanting to go, what's been working, what hasn't, and they'll tell me, and exactly what they need. And so it's all about one thing at a time, and it's, meeting them where they're at. And that may be learning how to eat for some people. That may be circadian biology and learning about sunlight and sunrise and sunset, and turning your LEDs and bright light blue lights off at nighttime, and maybe wearing blue blockers, and getting our bare feet on the ground. That's huge. It may be certain detox practices, or adopting a certain type of diet for a period of time to support what's going on. And so we're really just I hate the word optimizing now, but we're just getting people into a healthier space. And then from there, the nervous system stuff is always there. It's really starting with the basics of teaching them how to pay attention to their body. So we would start with things like orienting, and you do that with your senses. So if we're going to do that right now, you want to do a little bit of that while we're sitting here?
Sure.
Yeah. So it's like, it's real simple. It's like, can you feel your butt in your chair? And then maybe you can feel your feet on the ground. Yeah. I saw that nice deep breath you just had. So like, what's going on with your breath? And if we're paying attention to our butt in the chair, we're noticing our feet on the ground. We're noticing our breath. And we're just watching it. We're not trying to change it. We don't want it to do anything. It's just observing. And then, look around your room, scan very slowly, and see something that catches your attention, that looks just a little bit interesting. And, what's interesting about that? And as you pay attention to it, can you keep your attention on your butt and your feet on the ground and your breathing? I lost you. I lost you there. I can hear you now. Yeah.
I might have pushed the button. I was going to say that was really hard. I actually disconnected from my feet, my butt when I was concentrating on something else.
Well, that's great to notice, So like that's really good feedback. There's no such thing as failure in this work. It's just information. And so if we can stay curious, in that example, we could go, oh man, I disconnected from myself. I'm such an idiot. Right. Or we could go, isn't that interesting? I went to look around and I completely lost the connection to my feet and my butt, which, by the way, that's super normal and common and to be expected, right? I do that too. But it's just awareness. It's like, oh, I disconnected. And so that means we build capacity by building awareness and staying connected to ourselves and our environment. And so what that does is when we have stress, we're typically replaying something from the past that was stressful. And so there's a threat in our environment right now when there's actually not. So our system is on alert. Our shoulders are going up to our ears. We're tight in our chest. We're not breathing and we're not paying attention to our body. Or on the other hand, we're thinking about the worst possible thing and trying to think our way to safety of how we're going to prevent it or avoid it or whatever. And so we just want to notice those thoughts, and we can create a little bit of space with that by going, oh yeah, I'm having a thought about this thing and I can see that my attention is in the future. And so I'm going to come right back here and fill my butt in the chair and look around, and I'm going to pick out my favorite color, where I'm going to touch this glass. And so we're just using sight and sound and touch and taste and smell. And I can't remember what the exercise is, but it's like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it's like, what are 5 things you can see, 4 things that you can feel, 3 that you can smell or taste or whatever. So you're just like using your senses to bring you back into the moment, and you get to notice these patterns of, oh man, I got disconnected there. Really cool. So that's something that I can continue to be aware of and I can build capacity on. And now I'm able to walk outside and I feel connected to everything, and everything's really pretty.
It's delicious.
I can hear you now.
Okay, I just turned it off because maybe the battery's dead.
That's what I was thinking. I was wondering if it did.
Yeah, because I had just opened it like a half an hour before interview, and I was like, well, let's plug it in
there
now.
you go.
Stupid of me. So, okay, so I really like that technique of being grounded and notice what's around you, and you're thinking of the future, but then trying to stay here at the same time, because like your feet, feeling your feet in your butt. Because I find that when I am stuck in the future, I'm not here. I'm somewhere else, So that was a really interesting technique. Thank you for sharing that. And
like think about ruminating. Right now we think. What that is the brain trying to burn off the intensity of an emotion that we're not willing to feel because it's uncomfortable. So maybe we are stressed, and so we don't want to feel that. So we disconnect from that and we look at our phone, or we ruminate, and that rumination is burning off the activation from that emotion that we're unwilling to feel in the moment because we don't have the capacity for it. And so it's all about just, oh, I'm doing that thing again. How can I And it's like, I see you because that's a part, I see you. Thank you for showing up. I appreciate you trying to protect me. That's what it's trying to do. And so we just go, all right, now I'm going to come back here. I'm not going to dismiss the part, tell it to go away, try to change it. I see you again. Okay, let me come back to my body. And you can come with me, talking to the part. Sit right here, sit with me, and like, let's feel this. And let's like, what am I unwilling to feel right now? And I could just be, I'm going to put my hand on my chest. I'm going to let myself know I'm here. And then I'll go, okay, what do I feel right now? I'm feeling this heaviness in my shoulders. Okay. Is it okay for it to be here? And how can I meet it if I knew it would go away? Because a lot of times we're so afraid that it's going to last forever. That's why we're running from it. Makes perfect sense. So it's like, what do you need? Thanks for showing up. How can I help you? And the more we can, that takes a lot of capacity. That takes time. But the more we can listen and attune and give ourselves what we need, that's who you heal you. You become your own medicine by learning.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I like to also go back to something you said about your experience, and you mentioned fascia. Now, a lot of people who are listening are very intelligent people, and I'm sure they're familiar with some of these things, or some things may be new. So I know you and I know what that is. But just for the listeners, I just want to share fascia is a very strong connective tissue that wraps around our bodies, so wraps around our muscles, our bones, our arteries, our nerves, our organs. I like to think of it as saran wrap. It's like keeping us intact. And they say that if actually all our bones were removed from our body, we're standing upright and vacuum, suck them all up, we'd still be standing upright because of our fascia. And when clients ask me, like, why does fascia get so tight? There's several variables, but the biggest ones are poor posture and stress. And I can argue, and we probably both agree that stress could be emotional stress, physical stress, all those things. Now, I want to switch gears a little bit, and I want to talk a bit about your experience with Lyme disease, because back when you're younger, you would be out in like the sticks, and they'd be like tons of ticks on you, and you're like, yeah, whatever, flick them off, no big deal. And it didn't affect you back then until later, like after your head trauma, and it started to snowball from what I gathered. And then you started having all these other health issues. And I believe you mentioned it, but just in case you didn't, you were having severe anxiety attacks. And then all of a sudden now you're diagnosed type 2, pre-diabetic. You have arthritis. And then you got hit like 3 times with COVID, which is when you dropped down to 140 pounds. You could hardly eat. You couldn't keep anything down. They're giving you prescribed medication. And it's just like stacking. Like it's just going and going. And as this is all happening, you're also learning this program and developing this skill of who you're becoming. And then you went into a different direction. So I want you to share your story and what that direction looked like, how you became you today, Mitch. But share a little bit about this whole Lyme disease thing, because I don't think people realize how common it is and how it could actually stay dormant in your system. Because usually when I hear about Lyme disease, someone is aware of it and it takes over their life. Like it's debilitating.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, growing up on the cut, we call that Egypt is what we used to call it.
Wait a second. Mitch, where do you live in the U.S.?
Raleigh, North Carolina, but I grew up in about an hour away in Alamance County, like out in the kind of middle.
Alabama. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So,
that's where the accent is.
So
okay.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I was outside all the time. I'm the generation that you don't come home until the street light comes on or whatever, and we're in the woods all day long, fishing, hunting. You riding dirt bikes, you name it. And yeah, I mean, I pulled ticks off of me every single day. Like I didn't ever think anything about it. And my wife and I, were we dating or married? But anyways, we had this land. We must have been married. And we'd go out there and camp, and I got lit up by ticks. And that's the only thing that I can remember situation around my diagnosis. I didn't have a bullseye rash, which is very common. I was just upside down, and I tested positive for Lyme and certain co-infections, Bartonella, Babesia. And the way that it was told to me by the doctor was, what this lab result is showing is that this has been dormant and suppressed in your immune system. And then I moved into a black mold home that had black mold in it. And so that suppressed my immune system. And Lyme disease being an opportunistic pathogen, it was able to come to the surface. And the thing that's wild with that is that Lyme and mold are very similar. So yeah, I had lots of body aches, lots of brain fog, lots of intense activation and sleep issues. And I would get lost driving to work in the morning just because my brain was just so foggy. And
Wow.
so, and from where I'm at now, there were several. It's like I think of stress as like a bucket, right? My body was just overloaded with stress. So was it the tick bite? Was it the environment? Or was it my bucket of stress that was just overflowing, and it was the thing that kind of broke the camel's back? I had several of my issues over the years where things kind of took me out like that. One being long COVID, one being the Lyme disease and the mold, heavy metals, and metabolic issues all at once. But yeah, that was pretty rough.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say pretty rough. Like I recall my husband got COVID, and this is when it was all new, and he was like, we had to like put him in a separate room in the house. I remember I had gloves on, bringing trays of food at the door. I walked 4 meters back, let him open the door. When he was done, I would throw it in the guest bathroom bathtub and scrub it. Like it was so crazy. And he was off his feet for 2 weeks. I can't imagine what the long-term COVID would be like. I know an NHL player. I know an NHL player that I went to school with. He was captain of the oh my God, I can't remember, Chicago Penguins or whatever. And he had to stop playing hockey because it was so bad. He got the long-term COVID. Like, there goes your career. So
yeah,
I can only imagine what you went
through. That's an interesting topic of long haul COVID. It would also fall into the category of chronic fatigue syndrome and what's it called? Mast cell activation, MCS. These are all definitions that say my body is in a collapsed state. So I think it's less about these labels because I've had them. And I think it's more about this dysregulated nervous system that has stressor after stressor of unprocessed intensity and emotion and symptoms that are just not being let out. And the system is just, so here's a good analogy. My mentor, Irene Lyon, this is the best. So it's like, you could think of your nervous system as like a pool with a bunch of beach balls in, right? And there's a ton of beach balls, and they're all just, you can't even jump in this water. They're so close together. They're just bumping around. And because there's no flow, there's no space, there's no room in these tissues, right? We're talking about fascia. The issues are in the tissues. So all this stored stress are these beach balls, and there's nowhere for it to move. And yeah, it's causing all kinds of crazy symptoms, right? And so what we want to do is we want to go in and remove the beach balls. But first, we want to grow capacity. So instead of removing the beach balls, we want to get a bigger swimming pool, right? And so what's going on in these situations is they've got these long haul COVID, chronic fatigue syndrome, cell danger response. These are all just overloaded swimming pools with a bunch of beach balls in there that are begging to be let out. And so because there's no capacity, the system just goes into collapse, and we give it these labels. So I'm a big believer I love German New Medicine. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
So German New Medicine, the way they look at symptoms are healing responses. So the body is either conflict active and there's symptoms associated with that. There's a conflict in the body from an emotional situation that is being processed, or they're conflict resolute and they're resolving symptoms. And so I think these labels are just, they're a group of symptoms that allow us to kind of understand what's going on. But if I'm that person and I've got these labels, I've been around these, I've been one of these people, you feel so weak. And I mean, because you're getting your ass kicked, no doubt. But to those people in that group, anybody's listening to this that's going through that, like it's freeze, it's shut down. The body can't handle what's going on. Sure, we can correct that with nutrition and lifestyle, but we really want to build capacity in that nervous system, just like I did. And you can do it basically from scratch, where I couldn't eat food, couldn't move, couldn't walk more than 15 minutes at a time, because my nervous system was just overloaded.
Okay. So, whoa, rewind. So what I'm hearing you saying is that all these things, head trauma, and you've recently just had a recent trauma with your dog lately too. We'll get to that. But you had a head trauma falling from a 2-story building. You've had, minor head traumas when you were doing college football when you're younger. But then you also had COVID, a pre-diabetic, Lyme disease, arthritis. And you're saying that by working on your nervous system, that you've been able to let go of these labels that you have, so therefore you believe that that's just it, that's what I have, and you've been able to heal that. Am I hearing you right?
Definitely. I think the more that I learn, and I guess I've been doing this for 20 years, I think the root is in, I mean, I went down all these pathways, rabbit holes of detox, of looking for the perfect diet, perfect supplements, perfect way to live and do things. And all that perfection is a trauma response, that I'm not good enough. Something's wrong with me. I'm broken and I got to fix it. And you're not broken. You had emotional, our society does not teach us how to heal from trauma. And we don't just get it from the things that we've experienced. We get it from 10 generations that came before us. All of our ancestors' traumas that weren't addressed or passed on to us. And so we're inheriting all of that stuff. Our society is inherently traumatic because they teach us to abandon ourselves. Look at the food choices that we have. Look at the drinking water. Look at the go, burn at both ends, sleep when I die culture. The blue light on TV at nighttime with the programming while we're in these lower energy states of like theta, and so it's programming. It's going right into our subconscious. Think about the culture of work, and it's like you got to hustle until you drop. And even if you get into exercise, we're talking about addiction to start. Exercising and eating perfect is an addiction, and it's an attempt to control, to feel safe. And so all of these things are an attempt. We don't even know what safety is a lot of times. And so the dysfunctions of the nervous system, again, is tied to all the different systems of the body. And of course, if our nervous system is dysfunctional, then we're constantly in survival and fight or flight. And so that's no time to digest food or be creative. And I think that the root is in the nervous system. I've exhausted every other thing that I can find, and I've never experienced anything that works like this does. It's you. We are so freaking powerful, but all of these things are designed to keep you stressed, keep you powerless, keep you chasing bullshit, and keep you separated from your authenticity and trying to be your patterns. We treat ourselves like we were treated. We have conditioning that says, listen to other people. And so we don't trust ourselves, and then we don't know who we are. And we're just drowning in inflammation and toxic behavior. And we don't even know what healthy is. It's also often health becomes these neurotic, compulsory attempts at controlling to heal. To me, it's
Yeah.
distraction. And thank God for those
Yeah.
distractions, because we ain't ready for this work. We ain't ready to meet the parts of us that we've exiled that are screaming for our attention. That takes a lot of work to do that.
And it's not even just the parts of us that we exiled in our life. Like you said, it's generationally, things that we've adapted from our family system. So there was parts of us that we could have become or who we should be, but we've been, you know, it's been passed down from like our families and so on. And culturally too, like I live in Canada and you live in the United States. Like there's just some things culturally, like what seems acceptable, like, certain foods, what we eat and all those things. So that is really powerful, Mitch, that you have gone through.
Sneaky powerful. The nervous system is sneaky powerful.
Yeah. And I just, I can't find the words, because I feel like this is something that we all need. And can you talk about your recent accident with your dog? You were taking your bike. I think you're on a bicycle with your dog. And I wanted also, when you share this piece, at this time, did you have these tools to help with your nervous system?
Bicycle with my dog. You're gonna have to help me.
Was it a bicycle? Didn't she get hit? I'm sorry,
it was in a car. I was driving. Okay, now I got you.
I was in a car. Okay, sorry. Like I said, I don't know the full scope of the story, but there was something with the dog.
Yeah. I appreciate your research. It makes sense now. Yeah, that was 2019, I believe. So like 6 years ago, and I had started my health coaching business, and I was moved to a bigger city here in Raleigh. I was in Durham at the time, and I was going to see one of my first clients, and I was texting her and ran through a stop sign and got T-boned by a dump truck, and it killed my dog. And near-death experience for me. I woke up on the side of the road and with a cop in my face telling me you'd been in an accident. And I don't know. If you see this car, I have no idea how I survived. It was so intense.
So you got T-boned and you flew out of your car?
I'd say I don't even know. I could have flown out. I don't think so, though. But I mean, the entire car, like I remember getting to see at the junkyard and walking to my car to get some things, 2 or 3 days after it happened. And the junkyard guy was like, whose car is this? And I was like, it was mine. And he was like, I can feel emotion coming up right now, where, he started crying and he was like, what the fuck? Excuse my language, but he's like, what happened? I mean, it was everything was crushed in besides my driver's seat. It was, it's pretty wild to think about. So I had post-concussion syndrome for like a year. I couldn't get out of bed and walk more than 10 or 15 minutes at a time. It was terrifying. And that's really when I started getting into mindset and meditation and really coming out of like this, I'm going to hack this through biohacking, through nutrition, exercise. I'm like, instead of working out, I'm going to work in. I'm going to start going inside. And that kind of started that journey that led to the men's group and the trauma stuff. Maybe that was a tough period coming out of post-concussion syndrome. So the way that happened was I had a year of post-concussion syndrome. It was horrible. I finally started getting better, and then I got long haul COVID. And it took me a year to get over the first time. I got it 3 times. I had long haul COVID 3 times. And so it was, now that I look at it, it's more of this too many beach balls in the system. So it's like, did you heal from, I built more capacity and started healing from the first round, and wham, I got it again. And it was 3 years of dealing with that. And that's when I found the nervous system stuff and started building capacity, and I'm still building capacity out of that.
Incredible. So do you find from your first traumatic incident of falling out the window and where you were waking up with panic attacks and all those things. And then to this head trauma that you're able to manage it differently because of the tools that you were learning. And I love what you said, instead of working out, I'm going to be working in. Because I think that's the key thing that I want our listeners to hear, is that when I reflect back to what was different this time around with me in my journey of health and wellness, is that I used to do all these hard things and whatever, thinking that was giving me the results. But at some point I switched it and said, what is it that I need? And I was working with,
I love that.
So
I love that. So what's the difference between the first one and the second one? I mean,
or did you find a difference, like, between doing the internal work versus just trying to hustle through?
I was still hustling through. I was still trying to control, I biohacked it. Wow. Well, I mean, I worked with a doctor, and I worked with a doctor that knew how to biohack, wanted to do that, and that's what I needed at the time. That's what worked for me then. I'm not, because I've been through all this stuff, and now I'm a huge proponent of nervous system. I don't mean to shit on anything else that anybody's doing. Like, I'm glad that anybody's doing anything to improve themselves and build awareness and do whatever they can to heal. And people need different things. But if I look back, I immediately did a 3-day water fast, and then I did a fasting mimicking diet for like 5 days. It really helped with the inflammation. One thing that I wish I would have done a little bit differently is, I was so happy to be alive that like I would, and once I felt so scary and bad the first day or two, but doing that fast really helped my brain and the inflammation to go down. And so I got out of bed and was, doing too much. And that's going back to my conditioning when I was a kid of, you're not good enough. You can't rest. You got to keep going. And if you rest, you're weak. You're going to die. Rest was not something that I could do. But at that time, to feel safe, I needed a lot of control. And so I took all the supplements. I was doing brain, what is that called? Neurofeedback, and trying to, do supplements and do everything perfect. I got that book that I mentioned earlier, the concussion repair manual. I was all in that. I had a hyperbaric oxygen thing at my house. I had all the tools, so that made me feel safe. And I would probably do a lot of those things if it happened again, but I would be really meeting and talking to myself and working with the emotions instead of trying to plug those holes with doing. I would be a lot more being, less fixing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's an innate thing for men to want to fix something, where there's a problem, let's fix it, and as for women, it's more like, there's a problem, I want to understand it.
The intellectualization, that's me too. Have you ever heard of that? Have you ever heard of intellectualization?
No. Well, it sounds pretty self-explanatory, but tell us.
It's I'm going to think my way to safety. I'm going to figure this out because I'm so afraid of uncertainty and I can't trust myself. So if I can just understand it, and fix it, they just kind of go hand in hand. The figure it out part, the fix it part, and they can kind of dance, and real safety comes from self-trust and knowing that no matter what happens, what goes up must come down. I tend to think that things are going to last forever. And that's something I'm still working on. Healing is not linear. It's circular. And so we go back through these patterns and clean them up. And if we don't understand that, so the intellectual can be good too, then we're gonna re-traumatize and add that secondary fear to this situation instead of trusting that I'm gonna be okay. Intellectualization would look like I'm going to intellectualize my feelings. I'm going to talk about them, but I'm not going to actually drop into my body. So say I'm working with someone and they love to talk this is me. I'm talking about myself. I come in with a list. These all people often look like the best people in therapy. They'll often get feedback from their therapist of like, oh, you're so self-aware and you don't even need a therapist. And it's like, yeah, they are self-aware. They tend to be very intelligent people with high IQs and have a lot of awareness, but they don't know what it feels like. So they're avoiding the feeling, and the emotion and being with that. And so they're thinking they're the way to safety. And so it's hard. That's a tough situation because we reward that, but it takes a really good therapist to go like, every time I ask you to feel your butt in your chair, you start telling another story after like 10 seconds. Because it feels uncomfortable to sit with that. And so that's not a failure. That's feedback. Just like noticing that, I put other people in front of me, or I feel like I got to pick the right thing or be perfect to get love. These are not who we are. These are protective patterns that we learned at some point that we need to do and interact or be to get love, to be seen, to gain connection. And so we do that, and we think I am anxious. We identify I am a people pleaser. I am perfection. I have to be perfect. I am really smart and intellectualizer. And you're buried somewhere underneath all that. And so when we get to when we start to build more capacity and more safety comes on board, and we go like, you know what, it feels like shit whenever I abandon myself and prioritize this person, because and that's what trauma is. It's just abandoning, exiling, like we were saying earlier, these parts. And the work is welcoming them back. And this work is unwinding ourselves back to our authentic self.
Sorry, I have a thought. Give me a second.
Thank you.
I lost it.
I'm going to pause. I just realized I've got something in the oven. I can smell it. I'm going to go turn that off. Is that cool?
Yeah. Go to that.
Right back.
Okay.
Explaining to you, and my dog ripped the biggest fart I've ever heard. I was like, oh my God, I bet they don't hear that. So she's outside now.
That's so funny. Maybe from all our talking, your dog has released gas that was stuck in his fascia.
That's great. That's perfect.
It was a healing session for your dog. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. No, my dog does the same thing. It's like we're walking, then she just has this little toot. It's so cute.
She's been doing this like crazy the last. A B-roll for that one. That can be one of our blooper reels there.
Yeah, I was thinking this is gonna be a blooper. Well, the thought has left me. There was something you said, but I was so zoned in into what you're saying that I forgot my thought. But so Mitch, this has been such an interesting conversation. I feel like we can keep going and talking about this. But let's respect our times and all that. We'll have to wrap it up. And I wanted to add that you have created this community of, I've heard that you created this community of men where they can meet together. Do you also have a community page for people from different places in the world that can meet up, or is this just in North Carolina in person at the moment?
It's just North Carolina in person here in Raleigh, North Carolina right now.
Okay. Now, what's your vision?
That's a good question. Right now, I'm just really interested in sharing what I've learned, helping people in similar situations as me. So they're typically people that have, tried everything and nothing seems to work. They're burnt out at their job, right? Or anything. They're burnt out from life, from kids, from job, from relationships, whatever that is, and they're collapsed and they're fatigued and they don't know what to do. There's also like the biohacker that's fried themselves, trying all these things, trying everything and nothing seems to work. And so that to me, the people that don't feel like they have the answer. Oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, I've tried everything and nothing seems to work. I love that because it's like, hey, there's this whole other thing that when you apply the nervous system lens, which basically means now I'm listening to my body, I'm following my impulse, I'm doing what my body needs, not what somebody's telling me. So when I can meet these protocols, these supplements, these nutritional approaches, exercise, you know, now I'm doing it the way I need to do it, not what, this or that guy says. So that may look like in the gym, I'm doing appropriate movement. I'm not crushing myself. In the diet world, maybe I'm no longer trying to diet and restrict. I'm just really trying to eat a bunch of nutrient dense foods and try to find foods that agree with me while letting go of habits like alcohol and things that are sabotaging that. I'm gonna quit burning myself out at work. I'm gonna realize, big thing with burnout is just not being aware of the body and not hearing the signals of, we call it like the yellow light, like pause and slow down. We're just burning right through that, and of course that's gonna result in fatigue. So the vision is like starting with one-on-one, learning more of how to work with people and what that looks like at this capacity, supporting people, finding their authenticity, creating a plan that works for them, getting back in touch with their body, working with these different intensities, continuing to grow my education. I'm kind of new at this. It's been like a year or two that I've been doing it, about a year of working with clients. Going to be taking more classes, and I'm really interested in like NARM. I'm interested in transforming touch. I'm interested in continuing with Irene. The next will be more like somatic experiencing. We call them on the spots. So it's like actually removing those beach balls from the system. Right now, it's really about growing capacity, and those beach balls kind of come out on their own, which is a massive project in its own, because if we don't have the capacity and the regulation, we're going to overdo it. And I don't know if you've experienced this, but overdoing it in this work sucks. You can't take the intensity that we took into the biohacking or into these restrictive, punishing approaches into our healing journey. That's the pattern that's going to kick our butt. And so working with people that are kind of getting started and people that are a little bit more advanced that have done some programs like Irene's and some of the ones IFS, things that we've talked about that don't quite click because I've intellectualized things so much. I've been through so much. I know what those depths look like and those like, how do I do this kind of questions look like. But this is the work that I'm meant to do. I mean, I don't want to pretend that I know more than I do and work outside of my capacity or act like I know how to help someone when it's not something. So right now, all the clients look like me. It's hilarious to I had to learn not to laugh because I would get on a call and I just start like, oh my God, they start telling me what's going on. And I laugh so hard because I'm like, oh, I know exactly where you are. And I had to learn to meet the moment and be neutral. That was misinterpreted a couple of times in the beginning that I found out. And then eventually I'd like to do group coaching, make it more accessible for as many people as we can and grow a community like we were talking about of people that have access to this work.
Well, and when you said they looked like you, that just tells me that you were attracting the right people, and not that they were physically looking like you, but they were going through. Yeah, they were going through the same journey, and they were stuck, and they hit a wall like you did, and then they heard from you, and they see your story, and they're like, Mitch can help me. This is my guy because he's gone through it, and now he's going to show me how to go through it too. And guys, you can also find Mitch Webb. He started a new podcast called Rooted Conversations.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm going to go follow you today. I hope you're on Apple. I'm on Apple, but I'm also on Spotify to listen to. I listen on there too. But I am going to find you and I'm going to follow and I'm going to leave a review and I'm going to 5-star it. So you guys go check it out. Support Mitch. hosting a podcast is not easy.
Learning.
And those, yeah. And people who do it is because they're passionate in serving others, because all this is free. Maybe down the line where we have thousands of followers, maybe we'll get monetization. But at the beginning, it's like the grind. You're just learning, you're helping people, and you continue to help people. And then maybe in the end, you get a little reward of like a few cents a day.
That's actually a good thing there. And I appreciate you highlighting that. It's like, I was working with my business coach and she's like, let's monetize this. Like, let's charge it for, and I'm like, man, it's enough money to this work is expensive, and it's enough to work with me one-on-one. And I want to help as many people as I can. I also got to put food on my table and get paid for what I'm worth. And so I try to be as accommodating as I can with the price and work with people that need that. And so this is just a way that I can openly share and really walk my talk and demonstrate, imperfection and vulnerability, and that healing is possible. I mean, I'm a work in progress, and I'm happy to say that. And I'm so thankful for what I've been able to do. Yeah.
But Mitch, our messes is what heals and helps others. For us to be perfect, to like be this porcelain Barbie doll or Ken doll in your sake, whatever, like it's non-existent, and people can't relate to that. So be messy, show up raw. Like if your podcast, the first few episodes are crap, that's okay. Like people will love the fact that you're showing up to do something out of your own time to help others. And so maybe you don't have the online platform to help people, like to do the group guide thing, but you are able to help people internationally on one-on-one coaching, which is awesome. So you can find Mitch. I'll have all his information in the show notes. You guys could check it out there. And if you resonate with this episode, guys, and you're like, I can think of a dozen people with these health conditions or traumas, please send this video to them. A lot of people don't know about this, and this is our opportunity. We got together to chat so that other people can learn this and find other tools that actually work. Because sometimes the conventional Western medicine, they have their place. They're fantastic if we're on our deathbed and they need to save our lives and resuscitate us. But it's those who are stuck in between, who are just handed out prescriptions or whatever the case may be, where we're in this gray zone and we're trying to live an optimal, and I know you hate that word, but trying to live a healthy lifestyle, where we need these tools to regulate ourselves so that we don't end up on our deathbed and, trying to get resuscitated at a young age when it could have been totally diverted. So thank you so much, Mitch. It was such a pleasure. And I know we're going to stay in touch soon. And in the future, if you have any future programs or anything in place, please let me know, and I will gladly share it with my listeners.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great connecting with you. I love your questions. I can really tell you did your homework, and I appreciate you sharing me with your audience. It's quite it's awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.